Hello, everyone. Welcome to Saturday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, ready to run you through a jam-packed Friday of results around the SEC, also to get you ready for Saturday's action around the conference. But before we get to any of that, I have to remind you that this episode of Weekend Waypoints and every episode of Weekend Waypoints this season is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Get ready for a new season of fishing fun with Academy Sports and Outdoors and reel in the best gear at low prices every day. Plus, Academy offers easy ways to shop and save time, like free 1-hour in-store or curbside pickup on academy.com orders. All right, friends, fun Friday around the SEC. I was at my own SEC game. I was at Tennessee, South Carolina. We'll talk a little bit about that as time goes on. But of course, as always, we're going to start with our games of the day. I've got two today. I promise I'll try to get it down to one most days, but last week I had, 3 or 4. On after Friday night, and today I've got two very different games. Not sure there could be two more opposite games. Let me pull up the box score here so we can follow along. All right, Ole Miss 10, Florida 9. At the time, moved the Gators to 0-8 in SEC play. They would remedy that later with the win game 2 of a doubleheader, but this one. It was a little bit of a back and forth deal, as you could tell there by the line score. Had some big swings. As you go down here to the scoring stats, I'll highlight the Brendan Lawson grand slam in the 8th inning, put Florida up 9-5. At that point, kind of felt like, all right, the Gators are going to do this. They're gonna get their first SEC win. Like, hey, maybe they can win both ends of this doubleheader. Maybe they win the series, and things just kind of flip on their head. He bat spikes towards the Ole Miss dugout. Just kind of a freshman losing composure there. That's too much. Like, you can bat, especially these days, you can bat flip, you can, do a lot of things, but spiking your bat in the direction of the Ole Miss dugout, not among them. He gets ejected. And then at the end here, the walks hurt Florida pitching again. They walked 3 batters in a row to start the bottom of the 9th inning, protecting a lead. At that point was 2 runs. I'm trying to do math in my head here. The walks hurt them, and then you end up with a walk-off Austin Foley sac fly. Not a great game necessarily from the starting pitching standpoint and what these teams would have wanted. Riley Maddox gets 4 outs. Liam Peterson, in his return to the rotation, gives up 5 runs in 4 1/3. So not what you're looking for there, but kudos to Ole Miss. Like, they've shown an ability this season to win games like this, because they're starting pitching outside of Hunter Elliott, and even Hunter Elliott has had games where he hasn't been as clean. But outside of Hunter Elliott, they really haven't gotten a ton of good starting pitching, and they continue to find ways to win games, and I think that's a skill. Florida, meanwhile, up until they got that second game of the doubleheader, which was kind of a wild game in its own right, had seemed to find a way to lose games, right? Like, it was just kind of like a tale of 2 seasons between these two teams. But a good win there for Ole Miss in that first game there. All right, let's pull up the other one. Very different game. It is LSU 2, Mississippi State 1. Just first of all, a game that started way late. Started at about 9 p.m. local time because of some weather, but they got it in. And they played like it was late. This game moved pretty well. Great pitching performances. Anthony Ianson was great. Kason Evans was awesome in relief for LSU. Man, that freshman's been really good. Pico Khan had a great outing for Mississippi State, and if you're the Bulldogs, like, that's a tough one to lose. If you get a start like that from Pico and you don't win it, that's tough, because you feel like with State, he's been so good, and there's been questions elsewhere on the pitching staff that you feel like you got to get you got to get a win in every good Pico start. That's a lot of pressure. I get that, but that's just kind of how it feels. Solo home runs for Ethan Fry and Luis Hernandez for LSU in this one made the difference. Some tense moments late, 2 outs in the 9th, base runner gets on, and then Noah Sullivan puts a charge in one deep to center. Chris Stanfield makes the catch kind of up against the wall in center field. So there was some held breath in Alec Box Stadium there for the final out of the game, but LSU comes away with a big win, and now a series win for LSU. So a nice bounce back there after losing the series to Texas last weekend. Mississippi State, they've played pretty well in this series, just kind of coming up empty. It's going to be a big third game for State to try to salvage something here. So Two very different games, two fun games though. There in the SEC. All right, let's get over to some comments. We got a whole bunch waiting. Jeffrey Baumgardner, can we all agree that the Vandy Whistler is the worst thing about college baseball? Yeah, a good reminder, Arkansas fans. I don't know when the last time y'all played Vanderbilt is in Nashville. For all I know, it was relatively recently. I can't keep that stuff straight, but if it's been a while, that was a good reminder for you. That's it's a tough listen. All right. Visa says, morning, Joe. How about them Hogs, Root, Kojal? And I agree about the Whistler being the worst. Yeah, great start from Zach Root. We'll talk about that. Cam Kojal against his former team. That had to feel good, right? Even if things didn't end on bad terms, I don't know how they ended between Vanderbilt and Cam Kojal. I have no idea. But even if they didn't end on bad terms, that still feels good to perform well against your former team. Because you don't want to go out there and fail and make it feel like they're glad that you're that you're no longer with them. You want them to feel like, you want them to feel like they still want you on the team, right? So good stuff there for Cam Kojal. Agreed on that. Carl Dunn, good morning. I think it is late night game and morning at Alec Box, but a great game. Yeah, agreed. It was a late one for you guys. Caleb Falk, another LSU guy. Ianson looked great after a long delay, as well as Evans. Great pitching performance after some criticism on Ianson's part. That's so true. Like, I was getting asked about Anthony Ianson and whether there should be any concern there. And I guess, it was fair to have some questions there, but I think he kind of answered them with what he did last night. Cameron Carter says Ianson was fabulous. Doubt LSU gets the game in tonight, which is going to throw everything off at the end of the year. Why winning the first two is huge. Yeah, good call. Good call on that. I do know there's some more weather situations coming, so stay tuned. I know they moved it to this evening, I think, in an attempt to do something. I think both teams will be motivated to get it in. Certainly State will be. Just from the standpoint of they want to get something from the weekend. And if I know Jay Johnson, I know him a little bit, like he's someone who really just wants to play the games. Like he's not really looking to, to pull the plug on a game unless they absolutely have to. So I would think I'd like to be optimistic they'll get it in, but obviously we'll see. Sean Miller says, first, in light of recent basketball news, you can joke about my prior coaching stint at Xavier or Arizona, but we were never to mention me and the burnt orange abomination in Austin. Okay, Joe. Yeah, for those who don't know, this was this is a joke that Sean Miller, of course, is also the name of the coach who just left Xavier for Texas, since that's the joke there. This Sean Miller is an A&M guy. But I made a joke like in one of the first episodes of Weekend Waypoints that I did, because Sean was a commenter, that I was hoping these comments were coming from basketball coach Sean Miller. Last, they were not. And this Sean Miller has been a value add comments wise in the show. So I guess in hindsight, I'm glad it wasn't basketball Sean Miller, because I'm sure he wouldn't have had nearly as much time to comment. Joey says, I'm in Columbia. Are you down amongst the commenters, Joe, or up in the booth? I'm in the press box, the open air press area. Great press box view in Columbia. But I do make it down to the concourse a little bit here and there. So if you see me out and about, say hello. I go down there to get food. Shout out to TKO, which is the little Asian food stand, kind of like just to the third base side of home plate, but more or less directly behind home plate. The owner of said stand is also the guy you can see like feverishly waving his Gamecocks flag. But regardless, that is my food recommendation at Founders Park, is the Asian food stand kind of directly behind home plate. Carl Dunn, game 3 moved to 6 p.m. Central Time there for LSU, and as Carl puts it, Moo State. All right. Sean Miller says, with that out of the way, how about Weston Moss last night? Prayer gets blasted, Adams obituaries being written, and in comes Weston Moss to save the day. Totally agree. Season-saving performance from Weston Moss, question mark. I mean, I guess we'll have to see how the rest of the weekend goes, right? But if this game was a turning point, I think Weston Moss is going to have to do with the turnaround, because that was an awesome performance in a game that felt like it was getting away from A&M really quickly. I was watching it in the press box before my game started that I was at, and it was it felt like, oh boy, here we go again. the same old A&M we've seen all season, and then they turned it around. So kudos to the Aggies there. Weston Moss, outstanding performance. Ryan says, how do you rank the top of the SEC? Is Tennessee still on their own tier, or is Arkansas or Georgia moved up to that tier? So this is going to sound like a cop-out, but talk to me after tonight tomorrow morning, because if Zach Root, he pitched great yesterday. If Gabe Gackle pitches well, then I start to reconsider Arkansas a little bit, because Zach Root had the one bad start, but otherwise he's been great. Vital Shees has been great filling in for Gage Wood. Gage Wood will be back at some point. The offense continues to rake. I could be convinced on Arkansas. And then on Georgia, we'll talk about this win, but they beat Auburn 4-1. And if Colton Smith was great in relief, and Charlie Goldstein as an opener was pretty good too. But if they're going to pitch at all based on what their offense has been doing, and they got held to 4 runs, kudos to Auburn's pitching for holding Georgia to 4 runs too. That was the most shocking score last night. Georgia 4, Auburn 1 at Foley Field after what those teams had been doing offensively. So I think you've nailed the right teams there. Arkansas and Georgia is right behind Tennessee. LSU obviously also in that mix. They took a step back last weekend, but for me, it's still Tennessee on its own tier, Ryan, to answer your question more directly. But if Gackle shoves today, or if Georgia has another good day on the mound, to me, those are the two teams that are right there with them. Hang on, I will. Robert Pugh originally said Florida's now 1-7, so we know y'all will have them back in the top 10. Then he said 1-8, so they will be in the top 15 for sure. And then said, and now that A&M finally won a game, are they back to hosting, asking for KR? Yeah, big wins for Florida and A&M. Obviously, we will not have them ranked, but jokes well taken there. But yeah, just big wins there for them. Long way to go before they start to get back anywhere into the conversations that we were having about those two teams to start the season. Virginia too, by the way. I know this isn't an ACC podcast, but Virginia looking better against Stanford this weekend. But they won a series against Cal, so they're beating up on the Bay Area teams. But they've struggled with the more traditional ACC teams so far. So we'll see if they can get it turned around as well. They 1-2 in the preseason poll, not looking great. Oh, Jeffrey says the Whistler travels too. He was in Fayetteville a few years ago. I'm kind of surprised if he travels, he doesn't get. Maybe he does. And there's 2 Whistlers, by the way, or at least historically there's been. I'm kind of surprised if one or both of them travel, they don't get accosted more at those. I feel like that could be dangerous because there's so much negativity about the Whistler, and I get annoyed by it too. But there's so much negativity about him. I'm surprised he doesn't get jumped, frankly, at games. And that would be crazy. You shouldn't do that just because he's annoying. But I am kind of surprised there if he's able to travel, he feels like he could do so safely. Because man, there's a lot of animosity towards him, and I get it. I'm not saying I enjoy it. Carl Dunn, interesting. Can you get a new profile pic for the Hunt Palmer show? They have an old picture of you. I was not aware of this, Carl. Is it an old picture of me wearing almost like a salmon colored or peach colored shirt? If so, that is an old office photo for an office job I had 12 years ago. When I had yet to give up the battle on my hair, and it shows in that photo. And I was quite a few pounds. I was a decent number of pounds lighter, and that might be a nice change. It would be better on my body, but it's not a great photo. So if that's the one, I'm very familiar with it. I think it was on LinkedIn. It was on my LinkedIn, which I'm not on anymore. And so I think sometimes folks will just Google my name, and we don't really have author photos at D1 Baseball. So that's what pops up sometimes. And so I do see that photo pop up from time to time. Scrub the internet of it or something. So thank you for the heads up. Maybe I'll send him one. Jordan Shields, bad day to be a Gamecock and a Cougar tomorrow. Is that Tennessee and Houston? Is that the Elite Eight matchup? That will be a really good game, by the way. But we'll see about today. I'm looking forward to seeing Marcus Phillips. And then Jordan says the Whistler doesn't get treated very well in Knoxville. I would imagine not, to say the least. It's the worst gimmick ever. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I mean, he's got a right to do it, right? I mean, but yeah, I'm not a fan. Sean Miller says, never thought I'd be Googling photos of Joe Healy today, yet here we are. Yeah, maybe I just need to, post some others around the internet just so that they get used instead of the one LinkedIn photo. All right, let's move to hitter in the pitcher of the day. I'm going to take a swig real quick, and then we'll be right back. If you ever watch the Highway to Hoover videos, you'll notice that I'm able to take, swigs of my water or whatever I have while Mark is talking, not so much on Weekend Waypoints. All right, let's talk hitter and pitcher of the day. A lot of good candidates here, not as many as last week with hitters. As you remember, hitters almost didn't fit on one page last week. All right, hitter of the day is Cam Kojal. How could it not be against his former team? 3 for 5, 2 home runs. You can see him highlighted here. 5 runs batted in. Condolences to Will Gasparino, who probably would have been the hitter of the day had Cam Kojal not done what he'd done against his former team. Will Gasparino for Texas in a blowout win against Missouri. 3 for 5 with 2 home runs and 8 RBIs. Also a good game for Texas. Kimball Schuessler, 2 for 4 with a homer and 4 runs scored. Back to the top, a lot of candidates from Ole Miss and Florida, given that both of those games were pretty offensive. We talked about the game 1 of the series. Game 2 of the series, Florida wins, gets a 5-run 9th inning. A lot of damage against Braden Jones. In postgame, Chase Parham, who covers Ole Miss, does a great job. Rebel Grove. He mentioned that Austin Foley had said in postgame that he thought Florida might have had Braden Jones's pitches. Who knows? Sometimes it just feels like that. Like if a guy's stuff isn't quite as sharp as it should be, or if maybe they've picked up a tell. So sometimes it might seem like that and it's not the case, but it also could be. So interesting stuff there, but certainly they did a number on him. So 5 runs in the 9th inning for Florida in game 2, got the job done there. But a lot of candidates from that doubleheader. We got Mitchell Sanford in game 1, Austin Foley in game 1, who had the walk-off sac fly, Will Furnace in game 1 for Ole Miss. For Florida, Brennan Lawson, we talked about him. He got ejected, but before that, had a home run, 5 runs batted in. Luke Heyman in game 1 for Florida as well. Luke Heyman also a big game in game 2, as you see here. 2 home runs with a walk and 4 runs batted in. For Ole Miss, Luke Hill, Judd Utermark, 3 for 5 games as well there. For A&M, as they get off the 0 for their first SEC win of the year. Terrence Keel the second, and even when things haven't been going well for A&M this season, Terrence Keel's been such a bright spot for them and a spark plug. A guy who weren't really sure. I mean, Kendall, who sees A&M live as much as anybody on our staff, said he's really talented. He just might not be ready as a freshman, but boy, he is ready, and he's been playing great. 2 for 3 with 2 doubles and a walk in yesterday's game. Tennessee, Dalton Bargo, 2 for 4, a home run and a walk. Shameless plug, I wrote about Dalton Bargo after last night's game. You can go see that at d1baseball.com. Just wrote about, when you're looking at a Tennessee lineup, it's easy to overlook Dalton Bargo, right? Because, you're familiar with Andrew Fisher and Dean Curley and, the freshmen, Levi Clark and Jay Abernathy, who've gotten a lot of attention for the way they've swung the bat early on in this season. So the point is, there's just a lot of different places to look. And can it be easy to overlook Dalton Bargo? But he's dangerous. He's third on the team in home runs, even though he's only started 15 games. I believe it's 15 out of the 20 some odd that Tennessee has played this season. Third on the team in home runs behind Keelan and Fisher. And so just wrote about what he's learned. And last year he probably didn't, after transferring from Missouri, he probably didn't play as much as he wanted. Ended up getting 107 at-bats last season, but talked about what he learned, how he's better this year, how he's taken advantage of opportunities. He's leading the team in hitting in SEC play. He's hitting 450 in SEC play. And so wrote about Dalton Bargo. So check that out if you've not read it already. For South Carolina, Ethan Petrie, 4 for 5 with a home run. His 2-run homer in the bottom of the first briefly put South Carolina on top, but that was the last time they would lead in this one. And then Jordan Carrion, 4 for 4 with a double. The double was kind of a weird cue shot ball up the right field line. The first baseman was playing off the line for Carrion and kind of caught it off the handle. The handle at the end of the bat, I forget exactly which, but it was kind of spinning up the first base line and spun into the corner, and so he got a double out of it. For Alabama, in a win against Oklahoma, 8-6 win, did a good job against Kyson Witherspoon, got him out of the game relatively early. Also got to some good relievers, Crooks and Bowden for Oklahoma. Bama did a good job. Justin LeBron, how many times has he been on this list? Pretty much every day. 3 for 5 with a double and a homer. Cade Snell having a really nice year, 3 for 4 with a double. Jason Torres, 3 for 5. On the Oklahoma side, Dayton Taki, 2 for 4 with a double and a home run. We talked about Gasparino, Schussler, Kojal, Logan Maxwell, also a big day for Arkansas in that win against Vanderbilt. 9-0 win over Vanderbilt. Offense was really good. Zach Root pitched really well. Vanderbilt just not a good day for the Commodores on Friday night at home, no less. That's a tough one to lose like that at home. All right, we'll close out of this. We'll flip over to some comments real quick. Caleb says, happy for Ryanson. As I mentioned, would like to see Shores turn the corner as well, coming off Tommy John. Not sure how Gage Jump progressed. I know he was Friday night at the end of the season last year. Yeah, I think the thing with Shores, and Aaron Fitt, my colleague, made this point on the podcast last week, that with Shores, I think there just needs to be more patience with him. Like, obviously, Ianson helped himself quite a bit yesterday, but with Shores, it's kind of like, okay, he's the Sunday guy. We understand that. The standard for Sunday guys is different. You're really just looking for somebody that can give us 4 good innings on a Sunday, and most teams are going to be happy, right? But the stuff is so good, and he's still working back from Tommy John. And so with Shores, I think there just needs to be like a little bit of patience with him and just allow for the fact that there are probably going to be some outings that won't be all that pretty. But so I think your point is well taken, Caleb. Like, I just think there's a different standard for him given where he's at in his return from Tommy John and the expectations of a Sunday guy versus a Friday or Saturday guy. Dalton Bargo is on fire. That is correct, Joey. Yeah, he's swinging about really well. Always been a talented hitter, just, didn't have a ton of opportunities last year. And this year he's taking advantage of the ones he has. Sean says, nice to see Terrence Keel on the hitter of the day list. He's been a real bright spot for the Aggies this year. Great speed, great energy. He deserves more spotlight. Yeah, good runner, good. And that was, it was like, we don't know how much he'll hit right away, but he can sure run. he does it. He's got good energy, good like positive body language. But turns out he's been hitting too. Jeremy Scott says, roll tide. Day for baseball and basketball tonight. It just means more. Busy times around the SEC for a lot of teams, especially since the top seeds in the NCAA men's tournament continue to progress, including a close shave for Auburn basketball yesterday. Moonshine asking for a friend, how is Vandy ranked in the top 25? Yeah, they just kind of keep winning enough, right? Like, those things will shake themselves out. Like, this happens a lot with SEC teams where the SEC, to their credit, like almost never loses non-conference games early in the season with some exceptions, right? For the most part, though, most teams don't. So they end up getting in the rankings and they never really drop early on. So they almost always, there are at least a couple of SEC teams that maybe early in conference play are ranked higher than they should be, higher than they will be again this season. And it just takes some time for the rankings to normalize. So, that being said, Vanderbilt also has played fairly well at times this season. So it's not like it's totally just happenstance. But yeah, they certainly didn't look like a top 25 team yesterday. And they'll have to play well the rest of the weekend to kind of get that turned around. Lindsey Crosby comes in and says, really looking for Auburn's upperclassmen bats to do something this weekend. Pitching held UG in check, as he pointed out, but things like 0 for 5 with 5 Ks for McMurray can't happen. Woof. I don't think I noticed that was what McMurray's line was. My goodness. Yeah, and Lindsey, that's part of the disappointing part about it from Auburn's standpoint, right? If you told me, hey, Auburn's pitching is going to hold Georgia to 4 runs, I'd have been like, Auburn's winning that game. So the fact that they didn't is tough. It's a tough pill to swallow. That you pitched better against that team than you probably could have even bargained for, right? Or could have certainly better than you could have expected. And you didn't get that game. That's kind of a tough break there. But I'm with you. Like, the veteran bats are going to have to come to play. You can't have that kind of game from a veteran like McMurray. And I think it's a good point in the larger picture there, Lindsey, because the freshmen, Freilich in particular, have been so good for Auburn that it's easy to think that this is just what it's going to be forever with them. And it might be, right? Like, we get freshmen in the SEC that just from minute one, they're awesome and they never stop being awesome their entire careers. But more often, there's a freshman wall, or the book gets out on them, or the pitchers make the adjustment before the hitters can. And freshmen deal with hitting some low points during the season. And so you have to anticipate that at some point those freshmen will hit some sort of wall and have to deal with it, and you're going to have someone else carry the load. And Auburn has a lineup that can do that. I don't have doubt that that'll happen, but to your point, it is important. Jeremy Scott brings up a good point here. I forgot to mention. Also, good that LeBron was able to stay in the game after injuring his wrist. Yeah, I got a I got a message as that was happening when somebody messaged me that looked like LeBron had injured his wrist, and I was like, oh boy, like that's the last thing. Just for college baseball generally, like that's the last thing we need is arguably our most exciting player being down. So yeah, good to see him stick around there, and that it doesn't seem like it's any too big of a deal. All right, let's get to pitchers of the day real quick, and then we will talk about the game to watch Saturday, and then we'll get you out of here. Anthony Ianson, pitcher of the day. There could have been any number of winners here of this. I think Weston Moss's effort, Zach Root, but I gave it to Ianson in large part because of he got 15 outs and 12 of them were via strikeout. I mean, that's just dominating, right? So good stuff there. Kason Evans on this list in a relief outing. I forgot to put the RP designation, but you guys know 4 really strong innings from him. Talked about Pico Khan. Walker Hooks in relief for Ole Miss in the game 1 of the doubleheader. It's easy to overlook it, but his outing, 3 1/3 scoreless innings, gave Ole Miss kind of the runway to come back and stage that comeback the way they did. He kept them in the game. Colton Smith for Georgia came in after 3 innings of Charlie Goldstein and threw 5 hitless innings, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. That's the Colton Smith we saw last year for Georgia, or saw a lot last year for Georgia. He's dealt with a lot this year, the tweaked back opening weekend, then he got sick and he lost some weight, and so he's working back up to strength, and it looks like, based on this performance, it looks like he's pretty close to being the Colton Smith we knew. Cam Tilley in the same game, good relief outing for him, 3 2/3 strong innings there to give them some length after Dutton got touched up by Georgia, as most pitchers will this season. Cam Tilley did a good job keeping Auburn in that game. Ultimately, they couldn't come back, but had they done so, Cam Tilley would have been a huge part of it. We talked about Weston Moss, 6 shutout innings, no walks, 6 strikeouts. Awesome stuff for him. And then Zach Root, 7 2/3 shutout innings, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts, and a comprehensive 9-0 win over Vanderbilt. And that brings me to the game of the day Saturday. I'm actually looking forward to Arkansas and Vanderbilt. Need to see something from Vanderbilt here. Like, you got to get up off the mat. I know Arkansas is playing well right now. But, losing 9-0 at home on a Friday is tough. I also want to see Gabe Yackel. It's a lineup a Vanderbilt lineup that you can navigate. I'm still bullish on Gackel, I guess, but I say that just because not so much in the rotation, but I say that because his stuff is so good. His command has not been great, but it doesn't appear that he's like physically limited or anything like that necessarily. So if you got to bump him to the bullpen, especially when Gage Wood comes back, like, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world if Beitelgeuse continues to pitch well. So I'm just kind of fascinated by seeing how he looks today and then trying to figure out what that means for Arkansas moving forward. And then again, on the Vanderbilt side, you just want to see them compete today after that tough loss. All right, running through a few more comments here. Sean says, some fun non-SEC tilts today. Clemson, Georgia Tech. Yep, that one's good. UNC, Miami. That game was over in 2:20 yesterday. That was a quick one. Oregon and Oregon State continue to beat up on the Midwestern Rust Belt. Yep. And then can we give up on Ohio State finally? Yeah, good. Yeah, good call there on Ohio State, man. They came so close in Jacksonville and even before that, like against Arizona State. So close to some decent wins. And now it just feels like it finally just all of that stacked up on Ohio State, and it just kind of straw broke the camel's back situation with Ohio State. That's a bummer because I think they're playing better than their talent, and they just don't have anything to show for it. Oregon and Oregon State, playing well too. I'm actually going to Oregon for that series between those two teams in April. My first time there, going to Eugene or Corvallis. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay. Caleb Falk would like to see young guys step up today. Happy for Evans and Cowens. Don't want to wear them out over the course of the season. Yeah, agreed. Like, it is a pretty heavy workload, especially for Evans, given that he's a freshman. Cowan, he pitched a lot at Wofford, so maybe he's probably ready to shoulder that much of a load. But your point is well taken just in general, that, it's only March 29th. You need to have the big picture in mind here. As far as the bullpen goes, Schmidt bounced back as well as Connor Ware. Newt has looked better also. Yeah, LSU, no shortage of options. That's for darn sure in that bullpen. Sean says Georgia Auburn doubleheader. Yes, also Texas Missouri doubleheader today. Thank you for the reminder, Sean. Let's see 40 plus runs today after the cold bats on Friday. Let's go. I'm rooting for chaos. Yeah, something tells me that after a 4-1 Friday game, that doubleheader might be like 40 total runs. We'll certainly see. Would not surprise me at all. All right, enjoy the Saturday games, folks. I will once again be at South Carolina, Tennessee. Ready to get out there. Excited to see Marcus Phillips. Excited to see if South Carolina, which fought pretty well yesterday, by the way, like scored 7 runs, did a nice job against Liam Doyle. They were pretty game, but they just couldn't slow down the Tennessee offense enough. I'm excited to see it again today and see what comes of it. All right, enjoy the baseball, everyone. I will talk to you again tomorrow morning. See you then.